Alrighty, guys, I went 4-2 in my 6 personal sports bets on patreon.com/BrockPage yesterday. I had the Knicks -4, Leafs -145, Jazz -2, and the Miami Hurricanes +3. All cashed in for winning tickets. And that's going to improve our record to 4-0 in our last 4 extra daily bets on that website. Now, if you want to access today's extra daily bet, it's only going to cost you just $2.99, and you're also going to get access to that membership for the next 30 days. And of course, as an added bonus, I'm also going to throw in my daily best play for you absolutely free. It'll be included with your purchase. Now, I currently have over 555 members who are signed up and active on that site right now. And before we go ahead and move on, just want to take a quick time out and welcome you to the video here today for Wednesday, December 21st, 2022. My name is Brock Page, and I do sports picks for free right here on YouTube. If you want to access all of my personal sports bets and see which one of these picks on this video that I'm actually betting on personally, you may want to think about signing up for my board member package on my website. My board member package gives you access to every single package, every single bet, every single day for the next 30 days. It's an all-inclusive membership. And if you find yourself enjoying this video here today on YouTube, please feel free to give it a thumbs up by smashing that like button. I'll tell you what, there's power in the thumb. I'd be forever grateful if you just took a half a second to hit that like button right now. And of course, if you haven't done so already, please feel free to hit that subscribe button as well, because I'd love to connect with you on a daily basis and see you drop me a line in the comments section. And speaking of which, it's time for some shout-outs. Got to give a shout-out to my man Stephen Lewis, who said, smash that like button. Also want to give a shout-out to Show Me the Loot, who said, keep up the consistency, man. Great work. And I also want to give a shout-out to Ross, who said, I was a fool and I signed up for Brock's picks, and I haven't won anything yet. And finally, shout out to Aunt Ruga, who said, you need to type the recap. And with that, guys, let's go ahead and dive into some NBA action. We're going to take a look at the Pistons at the Sixers, 7 o'clock Eastern start time. Philadelphia's -11.5, totals 225. And even though Philly's the clear-cut favorite in this one, I'm not sure they can score enough to help cover this number. They're in the bottom 10 in the league in home points per game. When it comes to rebounding the basketball, the Sixers are averaging fewer offensive boards than any other team in the NBA except for one. Now, they're facing a Detroit squad who covered in 6 out of their last 10 outings. When these guys play on the road, the Pistons are 11-6 against the spread while traveling. Bojan Bogdanovic, he's scoring 21 points a game, along with 42% shooting from three-land. Meanwhile, Jaden Ivey's averaging 15.5 points a night himself. Meanwhile, as a team, the Pistons are currently in the top 10 in fourth quarter scoring on the road, which means the back door is always open. Now, injury-wise, Isaiah Livers is still out with that shoulder. Meanwhile, for Philly, Tyrese Maxey's still out. Furkan Korkmaz is questionable. When it comes to the total, the Sixers are 10-7 to the under in the Wells Fargo Center. Meanwhile, Detroit saw unders against the likes of Sacramento, Memphis, and New Orleans. I'm going to lean toward Detroit plus 11.5, keeping that one close, under 225. Next matchup, it is going to be Bucks at the Cavaliers, 7 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Now, Cleveland's the 2-point favorite at home, totals 216.5. Now, both teams do have areas of concern that bother me. For Cleveland, these guys have struggled getting on the scoreboard this year. The Cavs are actually in the bottom 10 in points per game. Meanwhile, for Milwaukee, really not much different for them. They're arguably the worst shooting team in the NBA on the road. They actually have the lowest road field goal percentage in the association. So once again, problem areas for both teams. When it comes to the injury report, Chris Middleton's been downgraded to doubtful for the Bucks. Meanwhile, for Cleveland, Lamar Stevens is doubtful for them. Dean Wade is out with a shoulder. Now, total-wise, we've seen a good amount of unders between these two franchises. Cleveland's 10-7 to the under in the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. Meanwhile, Milwaukee's gone 10-3 to the under in their travels. When it comes to selecting a winner in this one, this game's being featured as my $1.99 daily best play on my website. So if you want to see whether I like Cleveland laying a bucket at home, or if I like Milwaukee catching a basket on the road, there's only one way to find out, and that's to sign up for my $1.99 daily best play on patreon.com/BrockPage. And just remember, guys, if you sign up for that package here today, you're going to get access to that membership for the next 30 days. But as far as making a free pick is concerned, I'm going to lean toward the under 216.5 in that game. Next matchup, it is going to be Bulls-Hawks, 7:30 p.m. East. Atlanta's the 6-point favorite, totals 234. Now, the Hawks have had a tough time covering the point spread recently. They're 2-6 against the spread in their last 8. And they're covering in only 40% of their contests at home. When it comes to rebounding the basketball, not many teams do it worse than Atlanta on defense. These guys are dead last in defensive boards at home. They're facing a Chicago team who has a high field goal percentage on offense themselves, and they're in the top 10 in road scoring. DeMar DeRozan's averaging over 25.5 points a game, along with 4 rebounds, 4 assists. Meanwhile, Zach LaVine's also scoring over 21.5 points a night himself. Now, injury-wise, Javonte Green is questionable with a knee. Meanwhile, for Atlanta, Clint Capella is still out with that calf. When it comes to the total, the Hawks went 70% to the over in their last 10. Meanwhile, Chicago saw 4 out of their last 6 get over the total themselves. I'm going to lean towards Chicago plus 6 over 234. Next ball game, it is going to be Warriors at the Nets. And that'll be a 7:30 Eastern start time. Now, Brooklyn is currently minus 11. Total is still off the board. And regardless of what that total is, the red-hot Brooklyn Nets have won their last 6 straight. And they posted a record of 13-3 since November 17th. And no real surprise here, guys. The Nets are doing a nice job shooting the basketball. These guys are in the top 3 in offensive field goal percentage. They're also led by Kevin Durant, who's averaging over 30 points per contest. And he's making 92% of his free throws. Now, Kyrie Irving, he's averaging over 26 points a game himself. He's also making 92% of his foul shots as well. When it comes to defensive play, the Nets have one of the lowest defensive field goal percentages in the NBA. They're facing a Golden State squad who's going to work without most of their top talent. Curry, Thompson, and Wiggins are out. Meanwhile, JaMychal Green and Dante DiVincenzo, they are listed as questionable. But I'll tell you this much, even when Golden State is mostly healthy, the Warriors allow more points on the road than any other team in basketball. These guys are giving up over 122 points a game away from home. And they're letting their opponents make 40% of their field goals against them in that same category. Now, total-wise, Golden State's 14-4 to the over while traveling. No real shocker there. Meanwhile, Brooklyn saw 5 out of their last 6 get over the total themselves. I'm going to lean toward Brooklyn minus 11 and possibly the over. Moving on, next game, it is going to be Pacers at the Celtics, 7:30 Eastern start time. Boston's minus 9.5 at home, totals 233. Now, the Celtics are averaging more points a game than any other team in the NBA. They're also drilling a league-high 83% of their foul shots. Jason Tatum's drilling over 86% of his shots from the stripe. He's also the team's leading scorer with over 30 points a game. Now, teammate Jaylen Brown, he's averaging over 26 points a night himself. These guys are facing a Pacer team on the other side of things who took the loss in 4 out of their last 5. And they're allowing over 117 points a game this year on the road. Now, when it comes to rebounding the basketball, well, these guys are arguably the worst in the league. They're currently in the bottom 5 right now in both offensive and defensive boards. When it comes to the injury report, Tice and Brown are still out for Indy. Meanwhile, for Boston, Marcus Smart is questionable for them. When it comes to the total in this one, the Celtics have gone a staggering 12-3 to the over in the Garden. Meanwhile, the Pacers on the other side, they saw overs against the likes of Cleveland, Golden State, and Brooklyn. I'm going to lean toward the Celtics, minus 9.5, over 233. Next ball game, it is going to be Raptors at the Knicks, 7:30 Eastern start time. The New York Knicks are -1, totals 218. Now, the red-hot Knicks are on an 8-game winning streak. They're playing some really physical defense. They're in the top 3 in defensive field goal percentage, and they have one of the lower defensive three-point percentages in the East. Now, offensively, Julius Randle, he leads the team in scoring with 22 points a game. Meanwhile, Jalen Brunson, he's averaging over 20.5 points a night. Now, they're facing a Toronto team who does have a tough time getting to the basket themselves. Some would say they're amongst the worst shooting teams in the Eastern Conference. Actually, they're amongst the worst shooting teams in the NBA. They're in the bottom 3 in the entire league in offensive field goal percentage. They're also making just 31% of their three-pointers on the road. When it comes to the injury report, Porter and Achua are still out. Gary Trent Jr. is questionable. Meanwhile, for New York, they're mostly healthy for the exception of Obi Toppin. When it comes to the total in this one, New York went 80% to the under in their last 10. Meanwhile, Toronto saw unders against the likes of Philadelphia, Orlando, and Boston. I'm going to lean toward New York, -1, under 218. Next matchup, it is going to be Mavericks taking on the Timberwolves, 8 o'clock Eastern start time. Dallas is -4, totals 228. But for a team laying a couple of buckets here on the road, the Mavs have been horrible away from Dallas this year. Out of 14 road games, the Mavs got the W just 3 times. They're also going to work without Dorian Finney-Smith and Maxi Kleber. Now, when it comes to rebounding the basketball, no one does it worse on the offensive end of the court than the Mavericks. These guys currently find themselves dead last in the NBA in offensive boards per game. Now, they're facing a Minnesota squad on the other side of things who continues to win despite their injuries. These guys won their last 3 straight, and they're in the top 3 in the NBA right now in shooting from the field. Anthony Edwards is currently the team's leading scorer. He's making over 45% of his field goals, and once again, he leads the team in scoring. Meanwhile, D'Angelo Russell, he's averaging over 16.5 points per contest. When it comes to the injury report, Gobert and Anderson are questionable. McLaughlin's out. Meanwhile, for Dallas, once again, Finney-Smith is out. Hardaway and Powell are questionable. When it comes to the total, the Mavs went 60% to the over in their last 10. Meanwhile, Minnesota saw overs against the likes of Chicago, Portland, and Oklahoma City. I'm going to lean toward Minnesota +4, over 228. The next matchup, it is going to be Magic at the Rockets, 8 o'clock Eastern start time. Orlando's the 2-point favorite, totals 223.5. Now, the Magic got the W in 6 out of their last 7. They're playing some pretty tough defense. They're in the top 3 in the NBA in defensive boards per contest. They also have the second lowest defensive three-point percentage in the league. They're actually limiting their competition to just 31% shooting from 3 land away from home. Now, scoring-wise, the youngster Paolo Banchero, he's averaging over 21.5 points a game, along with 6 rebounds. Meanwhile, Cole Anthony's averaging over a dozen points a game himself. They're facing a Houston squad who's on a 3-game skid, and they do a terrible job shooting the basketball. The Rockets are currently in the bottom 3 in the NBA in home offensive field goal percentage. Now, these guys are also making just 31% of their three-pointers in the Toyota Center. Now, injury-wise, Matthews and Tate are out for Houston. Meanwhile, for the Magic on the other side, Harris and Suggs are out. Wagner's questionable for them. When it comes to the total, Orlando saw unders against the likes of Boston, Toronto, and Milwaukee. Meanwhile, Houston on the other side, they went 60% to the under in their last 10. I'm going to lean toward the Magic -2, under 223.5. Next contest, it is going to be Blazers at the Thunder, 8 o'clock Eastern start time. Portland's the 4-point favorite, totals 234.5. Now, the Blazers covered the point spread in 7 out of their last 9, and they're one of the best covering teams on the road. Out of 18 contests this year away from Portland, the Blazers covered in nearly 70% of those ball games. Damian Lillard, he's averaging over 28 points a game along with 40% shooting from three-land. Meanwhile, Jeremy Grant's drilling nearly 44% of his three balls, and he's averaging 22 points a game. Now they're facing a Thunder team who dropped 5 out of their last 7. They do a pretty bad job on defense. OKC's giving up 117 points a game, and they're dead last in defensive boards. When it comes to the injury report, Baisley, Robinson-Earl, Giddey, and Deng are all inactive. Meanwhile, for Portland, Payton and Little are out. Yusuf Nurkic is questionable. Now, when it comes to the total, Portland's 6-1 at the over in their last 7. Meanwhile, Oklahoma City's 67% to the over in the Paycom Center. I'm going to lean toward Portland -4 over 234.5. Next game, it is going to be Lakers, Kings, 10 o'clock East. Sacramento's -6, totals 228.5. Now, the Kings are averaging more points a game at home than any other team in the NBA. These guys are scoring 123 points a game at the Golden One Center, and they're making 52% of their field goals there. De'Aaron Fox, he's drilling 50% of his shots from the field, and he's leading the team in scoring. Meanwhile, Kevin Huerter's making 41% of his shots from beyond the arc. He's also averaging 15 points a game. Now, they're facing a Laker team on the other side who won just 5 out of 15 road games, and they played some horrible defense in those contests. The Lakers are actually giving up 121 points a game while traveling, and in addition to that, they're also grabbing fewer rebounds on defense than any other team in the NBA except for one. Now, injury-wise, AD is still out. Westbrook and Reeves are questionable. Meanwhile, for the Kings on the other side, Barnes and Sabonis are questionable for them. When it comes to the total, Sacramento's 9-4 to the over in their own arena. Meanwhile, Los Angeles has gone 60% to the over in their road trips. I'm going to lean toward the Kings, -6 over 228.5. And with that, we're going to jump into our next and final NBA matchup. It is going to be Hornets at the Clippers, 10:30 Eastern tip-off. The LA Clippers are -7, totals 225. And as bad as the Clippers are offensively, they do still find ways to get the job done. They're 5-1 against the spread in their last 6, and they're allowing just 104 points a game at home. And no real surprise here, guys. The Clippers have the 4th lowest field goal percentage on defense in the NBA. Now, scoring-wise, Kawhi Leonard's averaging over 15 points a game, along with 6 rebounds, 3 assists. Meanwhile, Marcus Morris is averaging 13.5 points a night himself. They're facing a Charlotte team who lost 8 out of their last 9. And they have a .250 win percentage on the road. And when it comes to shooting the basketball, not many people are worse than Charlotte. These guys are currently dead last in shooting the three-pointer, second to last in shooting from the field. Now, injury-wise, Smith is out, Rozier is doubtful. Meanwhile, for the Clippers on the other side, George, Jackson, Powell, and Zubac are all questionable for them. When it comes to the total, LA's 15-2 to the under in their own building. Meanwhile, Charlotte saw unders against the likes of Denver, Atlanta, and New York. I'm going to lean toward the LA Clippers -7, under 225. With that, guys, we're going to jump into our lone college football bowl game. It is going to be Western Kentucky squaring off against South Alabama, and that'll be a 9 o'clock Eastern kickoff. It's football. That'll be a 9 o'clock Eastern kickoff in the New Orleans Bowl. South Alabama's -4.5, totals 58. And speaking of the total, the South Alabama Jaguars, they saw their last 4 straight get over the number. Overs against the likes of Old Dominion, Southern Miss, and Texas State. They're also in the top 40 in total yards per game. Now, Western Kentucky, on the other side, they're one of the best passing teams in the nation themselves. They also saw their last 2 straight get over the line. Overs against the likes of Florida Atlantic and Auburn. Now, when it comes to selecting a winner in this one, this game's being featured as my college football tier package bet here today on my website. And I'll include a link for that play in the description section below. So if you want to see whether I like Western Kentucky catching a few points, or if I like South Alabama laying the 4.5, There's only one way to find out, and that's to sign up for my college football tier package bets on my website. But as far as making a free pick is concerned, I'm going to lean toward the over 58 in that game. Moving on, little college basketball action. We're going to start off with St. John's squaring off against Villanova, and that'll be a 6:30 Eastern start time. Villanova's the 5-point favorite, totals 146.5. And as good as Nova's been at home here, I don't think they have enough firepower to put away St. John's. They're shooting just 43% from the field this year. They're also one of the worst offensive rebounding teams in the Big East. They're facing a St. John's team who scores 81 points a game, and they rank in the top 10 in the nation in offensive boards. Joel Soriano, he's third in the nation with over 12.5 rebounds a night. His 15 points a game also leads the program as well. Meanwhile, David Jones, he's second on the team in scoring, and he's averaging over 7 rebounds a night as well. Now, when it comes to the total, the Red Storm saw overs against the likes of Florida State, Long Island, and Niagara. Meanwhile, Nova went 6-2 to the over in their last 8. I'm going to lean towards St. John's plus 5 over 146.5. Next game, it is going to be Michigan UNC, 9 o'clock East. The North Carolina Tar Heels are -4, totals 154. Now, the Tar Heels are averaging 82 points a night, and they're one of the better offensive rebounding teams in the game. These guys are currently in the top 25 in offensive boards, and they're led by Armando Bacot, who averages over 11.5 rebounds a night. Caleb Love's also leading the team in scoring with over 18 points a game. They're facing a Michigan team who failed to cover in 4 out of their last 7. And of course, that span includes outright losses to the likes of Kentucky, Virginia, and Arizona State. Now, the Wolverines are also allowing nearly 72 points a game, and they're one of the worst defensive rebounding teams in the Big Ten. Now, total-wise, the Wolverines went 6-3 to the over in their last 9. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, the Tar Heels saw 5 out of their last 9 get over the line themselves. I'm going to lean toward North Carolina -4 over 154. Next matchup, a little more ACC action here. I'm talking about Clemson taking on Georgia Tech, 7:30 p.m. East. Clemson's the 1.5-point favorite away from home, totals 138.5. And in addition to averaging 76 points a game, the Tigers are one of the more dangerous three-point shooting teams in college basketball. They're making over 40% of their three-pointers as a team. Chase Hunter is also the team's leading scorer and makes over 49% of his three balls. Now, Alex Hemingway is also drilling 50% of his three-pointers. He's averaging just about double-digit points a game. Now, they're facing a Georgia Tech team who's one of the worst defensive rebounding teams in the ACC. When it comes to offensive production, the Yellow Jackets have been little threat shooting it from downtown. They're making just 32% of their three-pointers. Now, total-wise, Georgia Tech saw 3 out of their last 4 get over the number. Meanwhile, Clemson went 70% to the over in their last 10. I'm going to lean toward Clemson -1.5 over 138 and a hook. Next game, some more ACC action. I'm talking about Notre Dame squaring off against Florida State. And that'll be an 8:30 Eastern start time. The Florida State Seminoles are -1, totals 143. And despite being favored, the Noles are arguably the worst rebounding team in the ACC. They're at the bottom of the barrel in both offensive and defensive boards. When it comes to scoring points, well, the Noles are averaging just 68 points a game. Now, they're facing a Notre Dame team who rebounds quite well on the defensive end of the court themselves. They're also limiting their competition to just 69 points per game. When it comes to offensive production, Nate Laszewski's making over 42% of his three-pointers. He's also scoring a team-high 15 points a game. Meanwhile, Cormac Ryan is drilling over 45% of his shots from beyond the arc. He also ranks second on the team in points. And when it comes to the total, 2 out of Notre Dame's last 3 did get over the number. Meanwhile, Florida State saw overs against the likes of St. John's, Purdue, and Siena. I'm going to lean toward Notre Dame +1 over 143. Next matchup, finally getting out of the ACC. I'm talking about TCU taking on Utah, 9 o'clock Eastern start time. Utah's minus 1.5, totals 139. Now, the Utes are scoring over 75 points a game. They're in the top 5 in offensive boards. They also have marquee wins over the likes of Wazoo, Arizona, and Georgia Tech. Brandon Carlson leads the team in scoring, and he's drilling nearly 44% of his three-pointers. Meanwhile, Gabe Madsen makes over 40% of his three-point shots himself. And he's scoring 13 points a game. Now, when it comes to defensive play, the Utes have the 5th lowest defensive three-point percentage in the entire country. Now, they're facing a TCU team who's been little threat shooting the three ball themselves. They're making just 30% of their long-range shots. They're also making only 69% of their free throws. When it comes to the total, 4 out of TCU's last 6 did stay under the number. Meanwhile, Utah went 70% to the under in their last 10. I'm going to lean toward Utah minus 1.5, under 139. Next matchup, it is going to be Auburn squaring off against Washington, 9 o'clock Eastern start time. Auburn's minus 4, totals 139.5. And as good as Auburn's been, they did take the loss in 2 out of their last 3. And they've struggled covering the point spread. These guys are just 1 of 5 ATS in their last 6. And they're one of the worst three-point shooting teams in college basketball. The Tigers are making only 28% of their shots from downtown. They're facing a Washington team who's one of the best in the country at guarding the three-pointer themselves. The Huskies are limiting their competition to just 26% shooting from three-land. And no real surprise here, guys. Washington allows only 64 points a game. Now, offensively, Keon Brooks, he's scoring over 16.5 points a night, along with 6 boards. Meanwhile, Cole Bajima's averaging double-digit points a night. Now, when it comes to the total, Washington saw 3 out of their last 5 stay under the line. Meanwhile, Auburn saw unders against the likes of Northwestern, Texas Southern, and USF. I'm going to lean toward Washington plus 4, under 139.5. Next ball game, it is going to be Arizona State squaring off against San Francisco, 10 o'clock Eastern start time. Arizona State's the 3.5-point favorite, totals 141. Now, the Red Hot Sun Devils won their last 9 straight, and they failed to cover only 1 time during that span. They're also one of the toughest teams in the country to score against. They're holding their opponents to just 35% shooting from the field. When it comes to offensive production, DJ Horn scoring over 12.5 points a game, along with 4 rebounds. Devin Cambridge, he's knocking down nearly 47% of his three-pointers as well. They're facing a San Francisco team who lost 2 out of their last 3. And they have a tough time shooting from long distance. These guys are making just 32% of their three-pointers. When it comes to the total in this one, the Dons have gone 70% to the under in their last 10. Meanwhile, Arizona State saw 7 out of their last 10 stay under the total themselves. I'm going to lean toward Arizona State minus 3.5, under 141. Next contest, it is going to be Colorado State taking on USC, 11 o'clock Eastern start time. USC's minus 2.5, totals 141 and a hook. Now, the Trojans are on a 5-game winning streak, and they've been incredibly tough to score against. They're allowing only 65 points a game, and they're limiting their opponents to just 37% shooting from the field. When it comes to offensive production, Boogie Ellis is averaging over 15 points a game, along with a couple of boards and a couple assists. Meanwhile, Drew Peterson, he's scoring 13 points a game, along with 7 rebounds himself. They're facing a Colorado State team who failed to cover in 4 out of their last 7 qualifying ball games. The Rams have also had a tough time this year grabbing defensive boards. Now, when it comes to the total, Colorado State went 4-3 to the under in their last 7. Meanwhile, USC saw 4 out of their last 7 stay under the total themselves. I'm going to lean toward USC minus 2.5, under 141 and a hook. And with that, guys, we're going to jump into some NHL action. We're going to take a look at the Devils at the Panthers, 7 o'clock Eastern start time. Florida's the $1.35 favorite, total 6.5. Sergei Bobrovsky for Florida, Mackenzie Blackwood for New Jersey. Now, Blackwood's 4-2 through a handful of starts, with the goals against average in the twos. Now, the Devils have also been one of the toughest teams to score against on the road. These guys allow just 2.3 goals a game while traveling. When it comes to offensive production, the Devils are scoring more goals a game on the road than most clubs in the league. They're in the top 3 in road goals per game. Jack Hughes has a team best 17 goals on the year. He's also leading the franchise in points. Meanwhile, teammate Jasper Bratt, he's right behind him with 31 points on the year. Now, they're facing a Florida team on the other side of things who simply just allows way too many scoring chances on the defensive end of the ice. They're allowing nearly 33 shots on goal at home, and they're currently in the bottom 5 in third period goals allowed. Now, injury-wise, Gudas, Barkov, and Lundell, they are questionable for the Panthers. Meanwhile, for the Devils, Palat and Bastion are still out for them. When it comes to the total, New Jersey went 60% to the under in their last 10. Meanwhile, Florida saw 7 out of their last 10 stay under the total themselves. I'm going to lean toward New Jersey plus $1.15, under 6.5. Next contest, it is going to be Lightning at the Red Wings, 7 o'clock Eastern start time. Tampa Bay is minus 170, total 6.5. Brian Elliott for the Lightning, Ville Husso for Detroit. Despite some really good production out of Husso, the Red Wings as a team, they have had their struggles. They lost their last 6 straight, and in addition to that, they've gotten little offensive production at home this year. Detroit scoring only 2.6 goals a game in the Little Caesars Arena. They're also facing Brian Elliott in the net, who's been real good in his backup role. The 37-year-old is 7-1 through 8 starts, 902.7. Wow. Let's try that again. That's a lot of numbers. The 37-year-old is 7-1 through 8 starts with a 902 save percentage. That scrambled my brain there. Anyway, offensive production. Lightning, top 3 in the league in scoring. Nikita Kucherov's 4th in the NHL with 47 points. Meanwhile, Steven Stamkos and Braden Point, they have 32 goals between the both of them. Now, total-wise, oddly enough, Tampa Bay is 10-4 to the under in their road games. Meanwhile, Detroit 63% to the under on their own ice. I'm going to lean toward Tampa Bay, minus 170, under 6.5. Next game, Canadiens, Avalanche, 8 o'clock East. Colorado's minus 275, totals 5.5. Alex Gorgiev for Colorado, Jake Allen for Montreal. And even though Allen hasn't been great, the Habs have done a real nice job cashing in on the puck line on the road. These guys are 11-5 against the number while traveling, and that's good for nearly 70% in that category. Now, surprisingly, the Canadiens are giving up fewer first-period goals on the road than any other club in hockey. Defenseman Chris Weidman's a +4 when he's on a shift. Now, Montreal is facing a Colorado team who dropped 5 out of their last 9, and they have a losing record against the puck line at home. When it comes to offensive production, the Avs have been surprisingly lackluster in the Ball Arena. Colorado's scoring only 2.9 goals a game in the Mile High City. When it comes to the injury report, McKinnon and Byram are still out for the Avs. Meanwhile, for Montreal, Monahan and Matheson are still out for them. When it comes to the total, Montreal is 12-4 to the under on the road. Meanwhile, Colorado saw 67% of their contests in their own building stay under the line. I'm going to lean toward Montreal plus 1.5, under 5.5. Next contest, it is going to be Preds, Blackhawks, 8:30 p.m. East. Nashville is minus 195, total 6. UC Saros for the Preds, Peter Mrazek for Chicago. And as much as I want to fade Nashville on the road here, Chicago's Peter Mrazek actually gives these guys a little chance to win in the crease. Mrazek lost 7 out of 9 starts this year, and he has a goals against average in the 4s. Now, the Blackhawks are also allowing more goals a game at home than any other club in hockey. They're facing a Nashville team who outscored Edmonton the other night 4-3. And out of these teams' last 10 head-to-head meetings with each other, the Preds got the W 8 times. Nino Niederreiter, he leads the offensive production with double-digit goals on the year. When it comes to defensive play, UC Saros has double-digit wins in the net. Saros has a .911 save percentage as well. Now, injury-wise, McDonough is still out for Nashville. Meanwhile, for Chicago, Alex Stalock is questionable. When it comes to the total, Chicago, they're averaging just 1.9 goals a game in their last 10 contests against Nashville. So once again, if you're into historical trends, certainly want to think about that one there. Meanwhile, the Predators saw 4 out of their last 6 on the road stay under the total. I'm going to lean toward Nashville, -195, under 6. Next game, Oilers Stars, 9:30 p.m. East. Dallas is -140, total 6.5. Jake Oettinger for the Stars. Stu Skinner for Edmonton. And as good as Skinner's been, the Oilers do find themselves in the middle of a 3-game skid. They're also allowing just way too many goals on the road. Edmonton's in the bottom 10 in road goals allowed. They're facing a Dallas club who's scoring more goals a game than most clubs in hockey. They're actually in the top 5 in home goals per contest. Jason Robertson's a +20 along with 24 total goals. He's 3rd in the league in both of those stats. Meanwhile, Joe Pavelski's 2nd in the NHL is a +22. When it comes to defensive play, the Stars are holding their competition to only 2.8 goals a game. And of course, a lot of that is thanks to Jake Oettinger. Oetsy's 13-4 with the goals against average in the low 2s. Now, injury-wise, Dallas is mostly healthy right now. No significant scratches I can report at the moment. Meanwhile, for Edmonton on the other side, Evander Kane's still out. Phil Broberg is questionable. When it comes to the number, the Oilers are 23-10 to the over for the entire season. Meanwhile, Dallas is 60% to the over at the American Airlines Center. I'm going to lean toward Dallas, -140, over 6.5. Next matchup, it is going to be Coyotes at the Golden Knights, 10 o'clock Eastern puck drop. Vegas is -300, total 6 goals. Logan Thompson for Vegas, Karel Vejmelka for Arizona. And even though the Coyotes have stunk this year, Karel's given these guys opportunities to win. He's got a winning record between the pipes with a .910 save percentage. Now, Arizona also got the W in 3 out of their last 6. They cashed in on the puck line a dozen times on the road. Now, defenseman Jacob Chychrun's a +9 when he's on a shift. Chychrun. Jacob Chychrun. He's a +9 when he's on a shift. Chychrun shift. Anyway, they're facing a Vegas team who's one of the worst puck line teams at home in the league. Out of 17 contests at the T-Mobile Arena, Vegas has cashed in on the puck line just 5 times, and that's good for only 29% in that category. Now, the Knights' biggest issue has been their offensive production, or lack thereof, however you want to look at it. Vegas is scoring a league-worst 2.3 goals a game in front of their own fans. Now, injury-wise, Theodore, Patrick, and Howden are still out. Paul Cotter's doubtful. And when it comes to the total, Vegas is 15-2 to the under on their home ice. Arizona saw 11 unders this year themselves away from home. I'm going to lean toward Arizona +1.5, under 6. Now with that, guys, we're going to jump into our next and final breakdown for the video. It is going to be Wild at the Ducks, 10 o'clock Eastern start time. Minnesota's -290, total 6.5. Marc-Andre Fleury for Minnesota. Lucas Dostal for Anaheim. Now, Dosty's had a handful of starts, and they've been dreadful. Dosty, he's got a goals against average in the high 3s, along with an .899 save percentage. And no real surprise here, guys. The Ducks are allowing more goals a game than any other team in hockey. They're facing a Minnesota squad who does a lot of their scoring early in games. These guys are in the top 10 in first period goals on the road. Kirill Kaprizov's amongst the league leaders with 19 goals along with 42 points. Meanwhile, Jared Spurgeon's a team best +14 when he's on the ice. And when it comes to defensive play, Marc-Andre Fleury's got 11 wins on the year with the goals against average in the 2s. Now, total-wise, Minnesota's 8-5 to the under while traveling. Meanwhile, Anaheim saw unders against the likes of Los Angeles, Ottawa, and Dallas. I'm going to lean toward Minnesota -1.5, under 6.5 goals. And with that, guys, now it's time for our quick pick recap. And we're going to go ahead and start in the NBA. I like Detroit plus 11.5 under 225. Give me the under 216.5 in the Milwaukee-Cleveland game. I like Chicago plus 6 over 234. Give me Brooklyn minus 11 getting the job done against the number. I also like Boston minus 9.5 over 233. Give me New York minus 1 under 218. Minnesota plus 4 over 228. Orlando minus 2 under 223.5. Portland minus 4 over 234 and a hook. Sacramento minus 6 over 228.5. With my next and final NBA quick pick, give me the Clippers minus 7 under 225. And with that, let's dive into some college football. I like the over 58 in the Western Kentucky South Alabama Bowl game. And with our college basketball segment, I like James Madison minus 14 over 165. St. Thomas minus 6 over 148.5. Western Illinois minus 4 over 142 and a hook. Northeastern plus 10 under 138. Valparaiso minus 6 under 141. UNC Wilmington minus 3 under 130. Jacksonville State plus 9 under 134.5. LaSalle minus 8.5 over 127. Duquesne minus 9 over 150. Mount St. Mary's plus 2 over 132. Texas Tech minus 33 under 146. Kansas State minus 15 under 137. Georgia Bulldogs minus 5.5 under 140. Iowa Hawkeyes minus 32 over 147. UMass Lowell minus 7 over 138. Old Dominion minus 2 under 128. Nevada minus 10 under 139. UC Davis plus 25 over 145. Austin P plus 27 over 125. High Point plus 5 over 153. UC Santa Barbara minus 4 under 132. Boston College plus 10 under 131.5. Michigan State minus 18 over 145 and a hook. St. John's plus 5 over 146.5. New Hampshire plus 9 under 126. Florida Gulf Coast minus 11 over 140. North Carolina Tar Heels minus 4 over 154. Troy minus 6 under 138. Middle Tennessee State minus 6 over 135. Florida Atlantic minus 13 over 129. Southern Utah plus 12 under 154.5. Texas Arlington plus 5 under 120. UCF minus 14 under 127. Detroit plus 14 under 154. Incarnate Word plus 14 under 143. Georgia Southern plus 8.5 over 138 and a hook. VCU, Virginia Commonwealth minus 8 under 133. Bucknell plus 11 over 135. Delaware Blue Hens minus 2.5 over 140.5. Youngstown State minus 7 over 152. Robert Morris minus 8 over 140. Niagara minus 7 under 129. Florida A&M plus 38 over 132. Southern Illinois minus 6 over 137.5. Belmont minus 4 over 150. New Mexico State plus 4 over 144. Clemson minus 1.5 over 138 and a hook. Memphis minus 30 over 144.5. Tulane minus 28 under 140. East Tennessee State plus 16 over 141. SIU Edwardsville plus 15 over 147. Louisiana Raging Cajuns plus 17 under 142. South Dakota plus 15 over 154.5. UMKC Kansas City plus 2 under 132. Evansville plus 4 under 128. Southeast Louisiana plus 1.5 under 153. McNeese State plus 35 under 127 and a hook. Maine plus 24 under 140.5. St. Mary's minus 9 under 126. Notre Dame plus 1 over 143. UNC Asheville plus 22 over 152. Purdue minus 33 over 149. Washington Huskies +4, under 139.5. Utah -1.5, under 139. Cal State Fullerton -3, under 126.5. UTEP -7, over 133. Denver +8, over 138. Tulsa +9, under 144. Idaho +12, over 151. Arizona State -3.5, under 141. With my next and final college basketball pick, give me USC -2.5, under 141 and a hook. And with that, we're going to jump into some NHL quick picks. I like New Jersey +115, under 6.5. Tampa Bay -170, under 6 and a hook. Montreal +1.5, under 5.5 goals. Nashville -195, under 6. Dallas -140, over 6.5. Arizona +1.5, under 6. With my next and final free pick for the video, I'm going to lean toward Minnesota -1.5, under 6.5 goals. With that, guys, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on my website. Now, guys, if you do end up getting a membership here today on patreon.com/BrockPage, you're going to get access to that membership for the next 30 days. And, of course, as an added bonus, you're also going to get access to all the cheaper memberships on my site absolutely free. They're going to be included with your purchase. But most importantly, guys, got to thank you for joining me right here on YouTube. Really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. With that said, guys, happy Wednesday to you. Happy hump day to you. And I look forward to seeing you later on today on my website at patreon.com/BrockPage.